Hello, everybody. So I am back here today. It's a little bit later on. I've had something to eat. Had some lovely people so kindly brought me some lovely flowers today, which is just so kind. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned about going through this process of bringing out the book is that these kind of endeavors really do matter. They matter to the person who's doing them. They definitely matter to me. But they also matter to the people around. And I think sometimes when we're kind of sitting in our own space and we're thinking, people won't like it, people won't approve, people won't this, that, and the other, we forget that there's actually also probably loads and loads of people out there who really will like it, who really will approve, who really will be happy I'm just adjusting my lights here, that they will be really happy actually that we have taken the time, that we've been willing to share our voices and talk about these things that really matter. And I think it's really important to reflect on that. And if anybody is out there and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that. It may be that you feel like you can't do it, but you could. It takes a load of effort. It kind of takes perseverance. It takes a bit of bloody mindedness. That sense that we just won't not do it. It takes kind of sustained effort and a weird mixture of hope and potential futility actually, but you do know that it's really worth doing. So yeah, I'm really kind of chuffed a bit, and I'm happy that I'm doing this, but I do also understand that sometimes it is really tricky. You're going to hear some noises in the background, and that's going to be my dog Sky, who is very much happy to be here. I'm going to shift my screen so that you can say hello to Sky. Sky, here you go, say hello. She's disappearing off, and you can see Hero in the background. So in this part, hold on, I'm going to shut my door and shut them out. In doing that, you get a nice little glimpse of what it is like a lot of the time when I'm working, because of course my dogs are there and people do come to the door, and when that happens there's usually a bit of barking, and everyone who works with me does know that that's the reality of sessions with me online, that there'll be dogs and potentially sometimes cats joining in the background and showing up. Yes. So anyway, while we're here this afternoon and for this next little bit, I want to share a couple of things. So first of all, I've had, you'll see on the bottom, I've been saying that there's been a prize, and there will be prizes offered today. I have had loads and loads of people contact me this afternoon with, some people have sent me messages on Facebook. Some people have DM'd me on Instagram. I've had messages through YouTube. I've had email messages, and I've had WhatsApp messages, all these wonderful forms of communication that we have in all these different spaces, which is just such a delight. And of people who's been sharing their receipts because they've bought a Kindle copy of the book, or they've bought a paperback copy, which is going to come out in the next week or so, really. And it's been really delightful. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. So I've got some absolutely fabulous prizes. I'm going to see if I can bring them. I've got some wonderful freebies, really. So I have a couple of, first of all, I've got a copy of my course, Navigating with Heart, which is a course which is specifically designed. There's videos, workbooks and other resources, and I've put all of that together so that when parents are going through really difficult situations, whether it is divorce and breakup, which is what I really wrote the course for, but actually as I've been delivering the course over the last few months, the conversations they could be any conversations that we have to have with children, and they actually could be conversations that we have with younger children or with teenage children, or even actually with adult children. I think when I made that course, I was thinking really in one space of supporting children, at that moment of talking about divorce and breakup. But of course, the structures of those conversations, they're for any conversation, that when we have to present really difficult or challenging news or change to a child. And part of that is also membership into a community, which is a really small community at the moment. And I come into the community once a week, usually on Thursday evening, and we talk about all sorts of difficult conversations that we might be having with children, or sometimes when children's behaviour is challenging and we want to be able to tackle the kid on their behaviour, but not in a way that's shaming or blaming. So, oops, I don't know what's happening there. There you go, I'm back now. So I'm offering a free download of that course, which is £444, but I'm going to offer it free today to someone from the prize draw. I've also got a beautiful, I don't have the actual pen, but I have my beautiful Ellington pen. These are fountain pens, and they are absolutely brilliant to write with. They're cartridge pens, or you can have a bottle of ink if you don't mind risking spilling it, which I don't mind risking spilling it. I love a bottle of ink. And I've got one of those. And these are the pens that I use for my writing. The pen that I'm offering today, I haven't used, but I was really tempted to use it because I really do like pens. I received an absolutely beautiful Aspinall pen from someone at Christmas, actually, which was engraved with my name, which is the pen that I'm using actually for a lot of signing copies. And that meant so much to me, that pen. There's something about being a writer. I don't know, maybe you like pens. Anyway, I have a beautiful Ellington pen available for one prize winner. I've also got some copies of my book, which I'm going to sign for people who've bought it online, or people who've really bought it by Kindle, but they quite like a proper version. I say a proper version. It's proper on Kindle, but you know what I mean. I'd like one of these. And a whole load of other prizes. So we've got Leanne Lorraine has offered a CV glow up. She's an absolute expert in how to present your knowledge and your expertise on your CV. Really, really wonderful prize to win if you or someone you know is just applying for jobs. Maybe you know somebody who's graduating for university. A lot of people put an awful lot of effort into sending so many application forms to apply for jobs, but don't know that there are people with real expertise about how you share your knowledge and your wisdom. I have got Julie Bale, who was speaking earlier, and really this is a prize that money can't buy, to have a person with her level of expertise has offered an online half-hour singing lesson, which is just an amazing prize. I asked her what the value of that is, and she said, well, it's not something I do, but it's something that she's really specially decided that she will do today. Stacey Keane, who is a superb VA and PA, has offered a power hour. It really doesn't matter, actually, if you don't have business. A power hour with Stacey would be great if you just wanted to sort your personal admin out, your bills, and your personal home organisation. A power hour with Stacey is worth its weight in gold. We also have a wonderful another power hour, actually, with Sarah Brand, who is an expert at operations. She's an expert at how we run things. And if you think so many people now, we're tracking data, we're tracking what we do on using our devices, whether we're in business or not in business. And Sarah is an expert in how we bring that together so that we can organize and manage our information so much better and really help with that overwhelm. Emma Hine, who is an extraordinary business strategist, has offered a really precious 45-minute session with her recorded to really work on anything that you're working on at the moment. Hayley Baxter has offered a financial health check a financial ability to kind of go in. I'm going to just see if I can find the details of what she sent me, because it's such a valuable offer. Hold on one sec. So this is an hour to dive into any business finance conundrum. So maybe you don't need these prizes, but somebody else will, and they'll be really grateful to have the opportunity. Let's see what else we've got. There's some real goodies here today. And, you know, a lot of them have got business focus, but so many of us have those business focuses anyway. We've been offered, and this is I mean, God, if this isn't an area for a difficult conversation, I don't know what is. Stacey Holt of Legacy Protect Wills and Estate Planning has offered £200 off services for wills, trusts, and lasting power of attorneys. That is, I can't describe to you how much difference it makes having a will. And I don't know, a lot of people don't know, but when you go through divorce and breakup, there are two stages of a divorce and breakup. The first one is the divorce, you know, you apply for your divorce. And then the second one is where you create a financial order, so you know what's happening with your finances. When you go through the divorce, and when the decree absolute, as it used to be called, it has happened, and you're completely divorced from each other, here's the thing: you're no longer next of kin, which means if if one of you passes away, the other one isn't going to inherit, but you are still financially connected unless you have a financial order in place. And that's why if you go through divorce and breakup, really ideally you want to go to a mediator and get a financial order in place. So in situations like that, having a will, having a trust, having a lasting power of attorney, all of these things, they're really essential. And they're the kind of things that people don't talk about and don't really think about. And then one day when they need them, they don't have them. And that can be just really, really difficult. Another prize that we've been offered is by Alison Middleton of Amity Health. Alison is an expert in anxiety and trauma. She has written a beautiful book about how to help teenagers with exam nerve anxiety. And she's offered a discount on her private sessions, which is, you know, if you or somebody you know is going through a really difficult stage in your life, and most of us are at one point or another, you know, that's an incredibly valuable prize to be able to offer and to be able to receive. And then Helen Cummins her business is My Baby Expert. She's offered a consultation for any new parents out there. Now, this may be a raffle prize that you get, and you might think, oh, I don't really need that, but maybe you know somebody who does. Okay. And then Amanda Wagg, the amazing Amanda Wagg, has offered a visibility and branding power hour. Again, if you don't have your own business, you might think, why do I need that? But you will know somebody who does want to set up a business and does need things like that. So those are, I think there's some more as well, but from the list that I have in front of me, those are the prizes, and I will be going through, I will be totting everything up, and I will be sending out notification of who's won what prize tomorrow sometime. And that's going to be a really lovely thing to do. And I know that in doing that, everybody that has offered a prize is somebody that I know. And that is just such a, you know, fantastic thing to be able to have. Well, so we've also been offered a gift card for Yana and Nina Matos from Tropic Skincare. So anybody who wins that, I'll be sending details out. Yeah, so there's lots going on. We've been offered, Heather Prince has offered, she's a relationships expert, absolutely brilliant. You can go and follow her and have a look at what she does. It's absolutely superb. I think that's everybody. If I've missed anybody, let me know. I'm so sorry if I have. But yeah, so before I go today, what I wanted to do was, I'm going to just do a little reading actually from the book. One of the choices, and it was a choice I made when I was writing the book, was to put in some poetry. So when I was writing First of all, a lot of autobiographical stuff came out when I was in the middle of my writing. I think I'm going to sneeze. I hope I'm not. I don't know how to pause the video, so if I do sneeze, I'm going to be caught forever on camera sneezing. Oh, no, I'm not there. So I chose to put some poetry into the book because it kind of came out when I was writing. But I also feel that one way of sharing our voice is through the rhyme and the rhythm of poetic verse. Now, I don't write. I didn't have a lot of schooling, as I've already told you. So I don't write kind of deep poetry, but I do write poetry from the heart. So I'm going to read this poem, which is called Time. And these are all poems that came to me during the course of the writing. Hold on, my computer keeps doing this, so I'm just going to see if I can get it to stop doing that. And then I'll just get back to where I was. Da-dum. Right, so poem. This poem's called Time. There was a time when I carried my silence like a balm for wounds unspoken, always a steady pulse in my chest where words might have lived. In a mask, I moved through the world unseen, letting others decide the shape of things, fitting myself into spaces where my voice dissolved, quiet and safe. And then one day a child looked at me, green eyes wide, with a question too heavy to hold. Why do we hurt? She asked. And in that moment, my silence cracked. Words gathered, uneven, stumbling, hesitant, hopeful. Not answers, but fragments of truth, rough as coarse stones turning in the dark, grinding, screeching. Breaking through the years, I'd pressed them down. I traced the old boundaries, fingers running, feeling each scar as it lay beneath my skin. These were not walls to hold me, but the lifelines that told me who I was. And now silence, it sits sipping tea beside me in peaceful contentment, no longer a place to disappear, but a refuge, a breath before I speak, a sure reminder that I have a choice. So when I read poems like that, and this is whether I've written a poem myself or whether I'm reading somebody else's poem, something that happens when you read them out loud. And I do think that there's a magic when it comes to difficult conversations, when it comes to any conversation, in words that come out of our mouths and go back into our ears. I say it a lot during sessions with clients. Daring to speak, daring to share our own words. When we pause and when we do it, like I did it just now, the meaning of the words really hits, and it can make us feel quite emotional in that moment while we're doing it. Now, I can feel emotional writing words that I've written, that I've read many times. I went over that poem so many times, shifting the words, moving the commas, moving the points, changing it and changing it. It's something it's not new to me, and yet it still creates that emotion inside. And the reason why the emotion happens is because when we speak, when we dare to speak words that matter to us, when we put them together in a chain that forms language, we do connect with emotion. And I do encourage people who are reading the book to read the poems out loud, not because I think my poetry is great or spectacular in any way, but because it is written from the heart and it's written with emotion. And part of the process of this book, of Difficult Conversations, is understanding that when we speak, we do feel emotional. And that's whether we're speaking because we're trying to have a difficult conversation with someone else, or whether somebody is speaking to us, whether they're trying to have a difficult conversation with us. And in that moment, they will be emotional because they're speaking things that matter to them, and we will be emotional. Now, there are many, many ways that language is used. When I've been talking today, even when I'm writing in the book, I am aware that there are many people who use language. They use it harshly. They use it for manipulation. They use it to hurt other people. They use it to strip people down and make them feel bad. They use language to shame, to blame, to criticize, to make others feel guilty. Sometimes what people do is that they will withdraw language and simply refuse to speak. They won't share, as a way of leaving the other person with no communication. So when I was writing this book, I had some choices to make, and they were really important choices about how I used the language and the things that I spoke about. And a lot of the things that I've spoken about at a certain level. My full intention, and I will say this live on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram, is that I have more books to write. And the more books that I would like to write are looking in more detailed ways about the way that language is used in kind of toxic ways in relationships or in families, how we have those difficult conversations around age and around end of life. Actually, how we structure conversations with teenagers. I feel very much that teenagers can be maligned. They can be, they can be called, people call teenagers names quite a lot, that they're silly or foolish or they don't know what they're doing. But the majority, well, I think probably all teenagers that I've met, they've got lots to say. They just don't always feel that they're going to be heard. And also some of the ways they say it are different from things that we're used to. So they may use language that we're not used to. They may use phrases we're not used to. They may have an approach that we're not used to. But it's still very important to listen, because there's a world there that we do need to know about. So these other areas that I want to explore more deeply, I had to make choices. I truly do think there's about, I don't know how many words there is in this, but it must be between 60 and 70,000 words. And I did calculate that I'd written over 500,000 words. And actually, when I said that, I didn't calculate the journals. I've got 20 that I've filled, big A4 journals, although my writing's quite scruffy, so, some pages. But a lot of words were written to get to these words, and a lot of thoughts and ideas are to be shared that haven't yet been shared. But today, sorry, I don't know why that's doing that. I do need to make it stop, but I don't quite know how to. I'm going to mute that site and see what happens. So a lot of what I've shared in this book, there was more to it, and that's the reason why you'll find additional resources on the website, which will be going live on Thursday at some point, and there's going to be case studies, and there will be grounding techniques. So a lot in the chapter. Let me see, which chapter is it? In the second part of the book, I talk about how we use grounding techniques, how we use emotional regulation to keep ourselves calm when we're having difficult conversations. So if we go back to what I was saying about reading the poetry, when I read the poetry in this book, I quite often feel very emotional. Those emotions are something I need to pay attention to and think about, because when I become emotional, the emotion's going to take over on my communication and it becomes hard to speak. Sometimes what happens is when we become emotional in our communication, the other person that we're talking to criticizes us for becoming emotional, and often that will make us more emotional. Or they might give us an accusation or say something unkind that makes us emotional. Or we might actually get annoyed with the other person for getting emotional. Sometimes other people's emotion can be quite triggering for us. And that usually goes back to childhood, where we learned that it wasn't okay to be emotional. Or perhaps we had a parent who wasn't nice to us when we became emotional. And so we learned to feel ashamed of feeling emotional. So you can see that there's so many different areas involved in difficult conversations, involved in relationships and interactions. And throughout the book, Conversations at the Shoreline, I've tried to draw attention to that again and again. And with the online resources, again, I'm trying to draw attention to where we can reflect, where we can stop, where we can pause, where we can understand that in that silence, in that breath before we speak, we have choices. And it is always the case that our choices are our own responsibility. Because if we're in a conflict and we're in a very, very difficult situation, we don't have to join in an argument. We will need to defend ourselves, and we will need to protect ourselves, but we don't need to fully join the argument. And that's what I encourage people not to do. Step away if they possibly can. So later on in this book, I talk about why we are quiet, why we are silent in the beginning. I talk about the cost of suppressing our emotions, and why it matters. And I talk a lot about masking, how we mask our emotions. Masking is a healthy thing to be able to do. There are many, many times when we want to be able to pretend that something isn't happening so we can deal with what we're actually dealing with at the moment. I know certainly when people are going through divorce and breakup, we very much want us to, we don't want to expose our children to absolutely everything that's going on. So we need to be able to be quite, we need to mask. The problem happens with masks is when that's all we know. When we're so used to wearing a mask that we're not realizing how much it's costing us to wear that mask anymore. And it's at those times. Sorry, I've just got to, I'm going to try and stop that, see if that will stop that particular thing from happening. Hold on, because I just keep having a screen that keeps just jumping around ahead of me. Anyhow, so sometimes we have masks. So I talk a bit about that, and then I talk about how we prepare a conversation. And then at the end of it, at the end of the book, I talk about what happens after we've had that conversation. And the reason why I talk about that is because so much of what we're doing when we're having a difficult situation is sharing how we think and how we feel. And I talk in the back of the book, I talk in the last chapter, I talk about our values and our belief system, because how we live and the actions that we choose to make and the decisions that we take, it can be down to trying to please other people. Sometimes they're down to doing what's right. But when we're thinking about doing what's right, we're thinking about what aligns with our own internal kind of thoughts and mission. And so having a conversation, it's not just the fact that I studied philosophy for my first degree, but having a talk about what matters to us and what our values are is really, really important when it comes to difficult conversations. The reality is I do see a lot of people trying to maintain relationships with people when there are no shared values. Or I see people who actually do have shared values, arguing with each other about things that could be resolved and could be changed. But knowing our values is really important. I personally believe very strongly in the value of free will. I believe in freedom of choice. I believe that we do have choices. Maybe not in every single sense, but it's a bit like the considerate driving course I had to go on recently. In 98% of the time, we do have a choice. There may be 2% of the time where we really don't have a choice, but the amount of time that we don't have a choice is much, much smaller than we may think. We do have choices. And one of the biggest choices that we have is to walk away from stuff that isn't right. The other choice that we have is being able to look at another person's behavior or the way that they're acting and choose not to be in that environment. It is much better to choose to walk away from something that isn't right for you than it is to try and make somebody else change, because that will only lead to conflict. It just doesn't actually work. So I talk about values, and it was a decision to put values in, but for me, I stand by that decision. And when I was recording the audiobook and I had to read the whole book, I was happy I had that section in. Another thing that I've got at the back of the book, which I think is important, and I did want to put in, is I've got a glossary of terms. For example, rupture and repair. Rupture and repair is really important in relationships. Rupture and repair refers to the process of addressing and mending relational disconnection. So when there is a breach, when there's a misunderstanding, or when there's a failure to do something, or a breach of trust, or a letdown, or whatever it might be, but when there's a breakdown that happens, perhaps it's a kid who wants to talk to you and you were just a bit abrupt and you didn't pay attention, or you gave somebody a flippant quick answer when actually they needed a little bit more time and patience from you, then what that does is that is a rupture. It means that there's been a break, there's been some kind of damage to the relationship in that moment. Not permanent damage, but it is something that if it doesn't get fixed, it will be permanent. So if you imagine, I don't know, somebody who's got a shop, this is an example I use quite often. When they open up their shop, they've got all their light bulbs on their sign outside and it's all freshly painted and the chairs are all lovely laid out. Oh, it's all just so lovely. And if every time something gets broken or a bulb goes, or there's a bit of every winter when the rain comes and the paint starts to flake, they go out and they repair it, then that shop front will carry on looking really nice for years and years to come. But it requires that repair to happen. Everything requires repair. When you are on a boat, when you're a sailor, you know that your boat has to be taken out of the water every year and the hull needs to be looked at. It matters that the hull works and is fit for purpose, because it's the hull that stops the water coming in. So repair is what you do to fix when something has gone wrong. So if somebody has been, I don't know, they've been a bit brusque with somebody else, they've been a bit sharp, they've been a bit irritable, they haven't given the time that was required, then on those situations, we do need to go back and do a repair. And that's how you keep a healthy relationship going. So I have an example with all my glossary items. If a friend feels hurt by something said in a disagreement, repair might involve an apology, a clarification, or an honest discussion about what was intended, what you were trying to do when you said that particular thing. So we have to repair a relationship. Now, I do want to say, because this is something that I see, in a difficult relationship, you will sometimes get this process of rupture and repair to be misused. And here's the way that it can be misused. One person might cause a rupture in a relationship, and then when the other person says, I've been affected by that, the person who caused the rupture might blame the other person for being upset, rather than going, no, I can see why you would be upset because I did this thing. That's a negative thing. That's something that you see happen often in a toxic relationship. Another thing that can happen in a toxic relationship is somebody can say something and cause a rupture, and then they can attempt to repair it, and the other person can refuse to let them do that. So somebody might go, listen, I'm really sorry. I was really snappy with you. I didn't mean to. And instead of the other person saying, okay, yes, you were snappy. I understand you didn't mean to. I really appreciate you saying sorry, and I would also appreciate you not doing that again. That's a rupture with a repair. That's going to happen from time to time. But if what the other person instead says is, yeah, and you always do that, and you know, I just can't talk to you about anything. And if the other person then starts adding in stuff, then what they're doing is that they are, if you imagine repairing something is like gluing together two halves of something that's broken. One person can't do that gluing. You need both to do it. So when it comes to rupture and repair, although one person might cause the rupture, you actually do need both people to be willing to come together evenly and do that pressing together with the glue in between that allows the break to seal and be repaired. And if one side won't do that, you're not going to heal that rupture. You might splint it together a little bit, but it will erode over time. It will get worse and worse. Okay, so that's just one example of something that's in the glossary of the book. And I've put these things in there, and I really encourage people who are reading the book to kind of think, and by all means, like, reach out to me on Facebook, reach out to me on YouTube, reach out to me on Instagram, in all of the socials. God, we're all everywhere, and I'm definitely everywhere at the moment. Contact me at my Facebook page, or on my website. Go to the website, contact me, message me. If it's useful for you, join my community to talk about parenting, or when the course at the back of this book is out, which should be hopefully at the end of July, certainly at the beginning of August sometime, you can join that community as well, which is a community about difficult conversations. And difficult conversations can be how we repair relationship rupture. If relationship rupture is not repaired, it tends to build and build over time. And those are, this has happened when you're having a row with a loved one and it quickly escalates. And it doesn't escalate because it was just about that tiny thing about, oh, why don't you put your cup in the dishwasher? Yeah. It was because there was a whole load of unrepaired ruptures within the relationship. And so when one thing gets identified, everything else kind of joins in. And that's usually a sign that it's a couple who don't know how to repair, or it's a family who don't know how to repair. What they think we want to do is sweep it all under the carpet and act like it didn't happen. But no, it doesn't work. It's like the emperor's new clothes. They're not really there. And when we pretend a rupture hasn't happened, the rupture has still happened. We're just pretending it hasn't. We don't want to do that. Also at the back of the book, as I'm delving into the back, is I have put references. I put the references of all the books that I've read and that I've taken quotes from that feature. There's quite a lot of quotes that feature in the book. They're all things I've been collecting them for years and years, in another one of my many, many, many notebooks. So I started to put them in. But I've also put in some blogs and some podcasts that I really recommend. And then just some other books that I just love. I really do. Everybody who knows me knows that I love books. Everybody who knows me knows that I need more. I always need more bookshelves because I will happily go and buy more books. So I'm going to wind up fairly soon and go and have a drink of water, actually, because I'm quite thirsty. But before I go, I'm just going to share, there's a few poems that I would share. I think, just let me have one more look, just in case I decide to share a different one. No, I think, I do hope you enjoy reading the poems when you're reading this book. I kind of think it's fun, and I encourage anybody who thinks they can't write poetry to do it, really, because it's fun. Right, let's see about this one. I'm going to try and read it, and I do get emotional. Before I read it, I'm just going to read this quote, actually, from Brené Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection, which I do recommend. I remember talking to a client about Brené Brown years ago, literally a long, long time ago, and thinking, oh, no, I just haven't read any books here. I don't know about her. But actually, over the years, I've read her books. They're so good. Oh, I should have read them earlier. Hey ho. But here's a quote from her Gifts of Imperfection. Wholehearted living is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done and how much is left undone, I am enough. What a lovely quote. What a lovely truth, because it is the truth. And anybody at the moment, anybody out there who's got kids doing their A-levels, they know that's the truth. No matter what gets done or how much is left undone, I am enough. What a beautiful sentiment. So I'm just going to read this poem before I go, and then I will leave you. I'm going to pop back on at 8 o'clock and see how things are going. I must go and check how the book's doing. I don't know how many sales I've got. I'm going to add up as well all the people who've sent me receipts. It's so exciting. So this poem is called Mind Shift. I stand now on the solid ground of my own words, held within the rhythm of a beating heart, warmed by the belief that stirs within. Every book written was an act of audacity, a blind leap, a coin tossed into the well of original flow, water shaped and reshaped by time and tide. Thoughts do not rise in a vacuum. No, the DNA of a phrase tumbles through centuries before landing on my page, carried by the weft and silk of life, pouring through abundant minds. I hold the coattails of those who, like me, schemed and scratched, tapped and sighed, gazed anywhere but the task, noticing dust and distraction, stealing another moment to steep the brew of imagination. Am I late to the page, or has my dance been deliberate? A slow waltz of faltering steps gliding with the music of my soul. It's time to ease off the brakes, to release the strain, to loosen my teeth, swallow and breathe. Let the words fall gently, resting beneath the glow of the lamp. Trust is not a chore, but a quiet surrender, a softening into the flow. Freedom lies here in the lineage of all those who have touched the page, scribblers like me, finding their way through every word. There you go. And that's what it is. That's what it's like writing. You know that there's the DNA of every book that you've read, every wonderful thing that you've seen written down. And, you know, before that, before people were writing books, they were telling stories and handing those down as tales through families and through people who were good at telling a story. And that's where we sit today in our world of technology. We sit in a space where all of that storytelling, as I was talking about with Nicola earlier on today, all condenses into that spot. And our stories really do matter. They are important. And it's a wonderful thing to get them out and share them. So thank you so much for everybody who's been listening today and everybody who watches this on the catch up. I know the recordings will be out there on YouTube, but I do hope you've had fun today. I certainly have. I'm going to jump back on at 8 o'clock later on today for a kind of good night and a roundup. I just want to say, I cannot say enough words of thanks to everybody who's brought me here and to all the people who so kindly offered prizes. Really, they're just a wonderful lot of stuff. So if you've bought your copy, send me a message so that I can do that. I'm going to be so excited to contact people and let them know what they've won. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again at 8. And if anything that's been spoken about today has touched anybody or has raised anything or has triggered or brought anything up, please do just get in touch. You know, there's so many ways that you can get in touch with me. Pick one and reach out. I look forward to seeing you at 8 o'clock. All the best.